The peculiar death of Phoebe Handsjuk. Some deaths are so baffling, so inexplicable, that they blur the line between accident, suicide, and murder. One such case is that of Phoebe Handsjuk, a 24-year-old woman whose tragic and bizarre death in 2010 has left more questions than answers. Was it an unthinkable accident, a desperate act, or something far more sinister? Today we explore the chilling mystery of the peculiar death of Phoebe Handsjuk. The tragic incident. On December 2, 2010, 24-year-old Phoebe Handsjuk was found dead at the bottom of a garbage chute in the luxury Balenciaga apartment complex in Melbourne, Australia. She had fallen 12 stories, landing in a garbage bin below. Her injuries were devastating. Her right foot was almost severed, and her body showed signs of extreme trauma from the fall. Investigators initially considered the possibility of suicide or a tragic accident, but the circumstances surrounding her death quickly raised troubling questions. Phoebe had been living in the Balenciaga apartment with her older boyfriend, Anthony Hample, a wealthy events promoter. Their relationship, by many accounts, was turbulent. Phoebe struggled with anxiety and depression and had been battling substance abuse issues. Friends and family described her as deeply troubled in the months leading up to her death, but they also found it hard to believe that she would willingly climb into a garbage chute, especially one that was barely large enough for an adult to fit through. Even more concerning, the way she would have had to position herself to enter the chute defied logic. The opening was located high on the wall in the apartment's refuse room, requiring someone to climb up or be lifted in. The possibility of her crawling inside on her own seemed unlikely, particularly given the effects of alcohol and prescription drugs in her system at the time of her death. Adding to the mystery, the apartment building's security footage showed disturbing gaps. There were no clear recordings of Phoebe's movements leading up to her death, and some footage from critical time frames was either missing or unavailable. This only fueled speculation that something sinister had taken place. How did Phoebe Handsjuk end up in that chute? Was it a terrible accident, a suicide, or something far more sinister? Investigators and her loved ones were determined to uncover the truth, but the answers they found only led to more unsettling questions. The unbelievable theory. Authorities initially ruled Phoebe's death as a tragic accident, theorizing that she had climbed into the garbage chute herself, feet first, and plummeted 12 stories to her death. But this explanation quickly raised skepticism. The garbage chute was exceptionally narrow, measuring only 38 centimeters, 15 inches, wide. It was designed for disposing of small bags of household waste, not for human entry. The idea that Phoebe, an athletic young woman, could have maneuvered herself into such a tight space willingly and unaided seemed almost impossible. To enter feet first, Phoebe would have needed to lower herself backward into the chute, a movement requiring significant upper body strength, balance, and determination. However, toxicology reports revealed she had a blood alcohol level of 0.16, 3 times the legal driving limit, along with traces of prescription drugs like Stilnox, a powerful sedative. Experts questioned whether she would have been physically capable of such an acrobatic feat in such an intoxicated state. Adding to the doubts, forensic testing on a model of the chute revealed just how difficult and unlikely it was for a person to enter without assistance. Even professional investigators struggled to replicate the scenario, further fueling speculation that Phoebe had not entered the chute by choice. Furthermore, if Phoebe had somehow managed to squeeze herself into the narrow opening, why would she have done so? There were no prior indications that she had expressed a desire to harm herself in this manner. While she had been struggling with personal issues, her family and friends insisted that she would not have chosen such a bizarre and brutal way to end her life. This led to an even darker possibility. Was she placed in the chute by someone else? And if so, why? The theory that Phoebe's death was not an accident, but rather a cover-up of something far more sinister, began to take hold. A troubled relationship. At the time of her death, Phoebe Handsjuk was in a relationship with Anthony Hample, a successful and well-connected events promoter who was 19 years her senior. From the outside, their relationship might have seemed glamorous, but those close to Phoebe described it as turbulent and emotionally challenging. Phoebe, a free-spirited and artistic young woman, had struggled with mental health issues, including anxiety and depression. She also battled periods of substance use, something her family attributed more to self-medication than self-destruction. Friends noted that she often seemed torn between her love for Hampel and a desire for independence. There were reports of frequent arguments between the couple, and Phoebe had attempted to leave the relationship multiple times. In the months leading up to her death, she had confided in family and friends that she was unhappy and wanted to break free from the controlling nature of their relationship. Just days before her death, she had made plans to reconnect with loved ones and find a fresh start. The night before she died, Phoebe had been heavily intoxicated. CCTV footage from the apartment complex showed her stumbling and disoriented in the lobby. Hampel claimed that he had left for work on the morning of December 2nd and returned home that evening to find broken glass and bloodstains inside the apartment. However, instead of immediately calling emergency services, he contacted his mother, who then arrived at the scene before police were notified. This raised troubling questions. If Phoebe had been in distress, why hadn't Hampel or anyone else sought help sooner? Why was his mother, rather than authorities, his first point of contact? And if the relationship was as unstable as many suggested, could there have been a confrontation that led to something far more sinister than an accident? These uncertainties, combined with the bizarre circumstances of Phoebe's death, led many, including her family, to believe that there was more to the story than what had been officially concluded. The crime scene. Anomalies. Several unsettling details at the scene cast serious doubt on the official ruling of an accident. When police arrived at the Balanci apartment complex, they found evidence that suggested Phoebe Handsjuk may have been injured before she fell. Bloodstains were discovered inside the apartment, specifically on the keyboard of a laptop, a door handle, and near a broken glass, raising the question, had Phoebe been bleeding before she even approached the garbage chute? Even more disturbing was the state in which her body was found. When authorities recovered her from the bin below, her jeans were pulled down around her knees. This was an odd and troubling detail. If she had truly climbed into the chute feet first, how did her jeans slide down in such an unnatural manner? Some experts suggested that this could indicate she had been unconscious or incapacitated when she was placed in the chute, making it unlikely that she had entered it voluntarily. Additionally, the garbage chute itself was extremely narrow, measuring only 38 centimeters, 15 inches, in width. The idea that Phoebe, while heavily intoxicated, had been able to climb into it unassisted, position herself feet first, and then launch herself down was difficult for many to accept. Some forensic experts argued that it would have been nearly impossible for her to maneuver herself into the chute without external assistance. Despite these troubling inconsistencies, police initially treated the scene as a non-suspicious death, and no forensic investigation was conducted in the apartment. The possibility of foul play was largely dismissed, despite the strange evidence suggesting otherwise. Phoebe's family, however, refused to accept the explanation that she had willingly climbed into the chute, and they began to push for a deeper investigation into what really happened that night. The mysterious timeline. One of the most troubling aspects of the case was the irregularities in the building's security system. Security footage and key fob records, which should have provided crucial evidence about movements in and out of the apartment, had an unexplained gap. The system had been deactivated for a critical window of time, meaning there was no way to track who had entered or exited the building around the time of Phoebe's death. This gap in records raised serious questions. Was this merely a technical failure, or had it been deliberately disabled to obscure the truth? If someone else had been involved in Phoebe's final moments, the missing data could have erased key evidence that would have pointed to foul play. Adding to the mystery, CCTV footage did capture Phoebe earlier in the day, exiting the building on 2 separate occasions. On one of these occasions, she appeared disoriented, struggling to walk as she clutched her hands together. Witnesses reported that she seemed unsteady and distressed. However, she later returned to the apartment. How she spent the remaining hours before her death remains unclear. Phone records added another layer of intrigue. Just before she died, Phoebe sent a series of strange and unsettling text messages to her family. One message, sent to her father, read, "I'm going to a meditation center for a while. "I love you and miss you very much." The message struck her family as bizarre and out of character. It also contained grammatical mistakes, which was unusual for Phoebe. Some close to her even speculated that she may not have written the message herself. With the security records wiped and so many unanswered questions, the timeline of Phoebe's final hours remains one of the most perplexing aspects of the case. Did she truly enter the chute on her own, or was someone else involved in her final moments? The coroner's verdict. Despite the numerous inconsistencies in the case, the official ruling on Phoebe Handsjuk's death was that it was a tragic accident. The coroner, Peter White, concluded that Phoebe had likely entered the garbage chute voluntarily while heavily intoxicated. He stated that her disoriented state, combined with her history of sleepwalking and substance use, contributed to the fatal incident. However, this conclusion left many, including Phoebe's family and independent experts, deeply unsatisfied. Her family strongly rejected the idea that she would have willingly climbed into the garbage chute, especially considering its narrow width and awkward positioning. Experts pointed out that even if she had attempted to enter the chute, it would have required an extreme amount of effort and coordination, something unlikely given her level of intoxication. Further raising suspicions was the fact that Phoebe's injuries didn't match a simple fall. The force required to sever her foot so severely suggested something more violent than what would be expected from a drop down a garbage chute. Additionally, forensic experts noted that the blood found in the apartment was never adequately explained in the official ruling. If Phoebe had sustained injuries before the fall, who or what caused them? One of the most controversial aspects of the case was the apparent lack of a full criminal investigation. While police ruled out foul play early on, skeptics argued that crucial forensic work had been overlooked or dismissed too quickly. The involvement of her influential boyfriend, Anthony Hampel, also led to speculation that the case wasn't investigated as thoroughly as it should have been. Hampel, the son of a well-connected judge, was never treated as a suspect, and police seemed to accept the accident theory without considering other possibilities. Phoebe's grandfather, retired police detective Lorne Campbell, was among those who refused to accept the coroner's findings. He led his own independent investigation, consulting forensic specialists and legal experts, all of whom raised serious doubts about the official explanation. To this day, her family continues to push for a reopening of the case, believing that crucial evidence was ignored and that justice for Phoebe has yet to be served. Was her death really an accident, or was it a cover-up for something far more sinister? The alternative theories. While the coroner ruled Phoebe Handsjuk's death as an accident, many remain convinced that foul play was involved. The idea that she voluntarily climbed into the garbage chute, feet first while heavily intoxicated, seems implausible. The chute was only 38 centimeters, 15 inches, wide, meaning she would have had to navigate herself into an extremely tight space in an awkward position while impaired. Many experts, including forensic specialists, have argued that this would be nearly impossible without assistance. One of the most prominent theories is that Phoebe was pushed or placed into the chute against her will. Some believe that she may have been unconscious or incapacitated at the time, making her unable to resist. The blood found inside the apartment raises questions about whether she was injured before her fatal fall. Additionally, her jeans were found around her knees, which would have made it even more difficult for her to climb into the chute herself. If she had struggled against an attacker, this could explain her disheveled state. Others point to the mysterious deactivation of the apartment's key fob system during a crucial time frame. Without records of who entered or exited, investigators lost what could have been vital evidence. Was this a new or deliberate attempt to cover up a crime? Another theory suggests that Phoebe's relationship played a role in her death. Her boyfriend, Anthony Hampel, was a wealthy and well-connected events promoter, the son of a retired Supreme Court judge. By many accounts, their relationship was tumultuous, and Phoebe had previously expressed a desire to leave. Those close to her recalled that she had been unhappy and that she had suffered from controlling and emotionally distressing situations. While there was no direct evidence linking Hampel to her death, forensic evidence was either dismissed or never fully examined, leaving them more questions than answers. With no definitive proof of foul play, the case remains officially unsolved. But for Phoebe's family and supporters, the circumstances surrounding her death are too suspicious to ignore. Was this truly an accident, or was it something far more sinister? The family's search for justice. From the moment the coroner ruled Phoebe Handsjuk's death as an accident, her family has fought tirelessly to challenge that conclusion. They have never accepted the idea that she voluntarily climbed into the garbage chute, and they believe that crucial evidence was ignored or dismissed. Phoebe's grandfather, retired police detective Lorne Campbell, took a leading role in investigating her death. He meticulously analyzed the details of the case, uncovering inconsistencies in the official narrative. He pointed out that no proper reenactment was ever conducted to test whether Phoebe could have entered the chute on her own in her intoxicated state. He also raised concerns about the presence of blood in the apartment, the mysterious gap in key fob records, and the lack of fingerprints inside the chute, which could have helped determine whether she had entered it voluntarily or was placed there. Her family also questioned why a full homicide investigation was never conducted. Given the unusual circumstances, they argued that authorities should have treated the case as a potential crime rather than prematurely ruling it an accident. Some critics believe that the involvement of Anthony Hampel, a man with significant influence and family connections, may have contributed to a lack of deeper scrutiny. The case has since sparked broader discussions about how unexplained deaths are investigated in Australia. Many believe that the coroner system is flawed and that cases like Phoebe's should be subject to independent reviews rather than being closed based on circumstantial conclusions. Despite years of appeals and independent investigations, Phoebe's case remains unresolved. Family continues to fight for answers, advocating for better investigative practices and reforms in the system. They believe that somewhere, the truth is still waiting to be uncovered. The lingering mystery. More than a decade later, the death of Phoebe Handsjuk continues to haunt those who seek answers. Despite the coroner's ruling of an accident, too many unanswered questions remain. The blood in the apartment, the absence of key fob records, the impossibility of her climbing into the chute alone, and the troubling circumstances of her final hours. If it was truly an accident, how could Phoebe, heavily intoxicated, have managed to maneuver herself feet first into such a narrow opening? If it was suicide, why would she have chosen such a bizarre and painful method? And if it was something more sinister, who was responsible? And why has no one been held accountable? Even experts in forensic science and criminal investigations have expressed doubts over the official findings. Some argue that key evidence was overlooked, while others believe that a deeper investigation could have led to a different conclusion. Was this a case of a botched investigation, or was there something more at play? Something intentionally hidden? Adding to the suspicion, Phoebe's family believes that powerful connections may have influenced the case. Anthony Hampel, Phoebe's boyfriend at the time, came from a wealthy and well-connected family. Some critics argue that his status may have affected the way the investigation was handled, raising concerns about whether all possible leads were pursued without bias. While there is no direct evidence linking him to foul play, many questions about his actions remain unanswered. Another unsettling aspect of the case is the lack of conclusive forensic evidence. The police failed to conduct critical tests that could have determined whether Phoebe was unconscious before she entered the chute. The possibility that she was already incapacitated, either through injury or the influence of another party, was never fully explored. The apartment itself was not treated as a crime scene, which may have resulted in the loss of crucial evidence. Furthermore, the way Phoebe's case was handled has led to broader discussions about how unexplained deaths are investigated in Australia. Many experts have criticized the process, arguing that assumptions of accidental death or suicide are sometimes made too quickly, without considering alternative possibilities. The Handsjuk family has since advocated for legal reforms, pushing for independent coronial reviews in cases where the official findings are heavily disputed. Phoebe's story remains a chilling cautionary tale about how unexplained deaths can be prematurely dismissed, leaving families without closure. Until new evidence comes to light or the case is officially reopened, We are left with disturbing possibilities and a mystery that refuses to fade. Was it a tragic accident, a suicide, or something far more sinister? What do you think? Thanks for watching, and until next time.